potential opposition, or incompatibility, then cognition and personalization, intention, behavior, and outcomes. Just a moment. We show it. Okay. No. So, you know, through these 5 stages, we'll help these stages will help us to understand how the conflict begins in the first place, how it grows, what unfolds among the groups or individuals who are in this process of conflict. Now, conflict can arise between groups or individuals because of the differences in their goals, differences in their interest, values, or even it could be differences in the goals, values, and interests of the organization or individual. So let's look at it stage by stage. The first stage is potential opposition or incompatibility. So this is the stage in which the conflict process arises due to the antecedent conditions that could create opportunities for the conflicts to develop. Now, there could be many reasons, but here the 3 broad categories which are listed from where the conflict may surface are communication, structure, and personal variable. So if we have to look at the communication, different words or jargons used during communication or insufficient information or during the exchange of information, probably disturbances in the disturbances due to external factors like the noises, or it could be noise in the communication channel. All these conditions can be a place where conflict could arise. That is, again, if it is too much of communication you're providing where the other person is unable to grasp what exactly is the point you're trying to make and may tend to ignore, or too little communication where you're not actually communicating what is required in a proper manner. So conflict can arise from insufficient information, misunderstanding, could be like language barriers. It could also be like language barriers during the communication where you're not able to communicate properly, noise in the communication channels. For example, you are trying to connect and communicate something important over phone, and probably there was some kind of a network issue and the other person could not hear you properly, or all of a sudden, you were breaking, your voice was breaking, and they could only hear you in bits of pieces, or there's background noise where you're trying to communicate something and the other person is not able to hear you. All this could lead to conflict. Why? Because maybe you're trying to communicate something important and something had to be done, and because there was disturbances in the communication channel, you could not communicate properly, and so the work was not done, and that could lead to conflict. So another example what I could give here is, a new teacher comes to your class and forms a group for you all to work on a project assignment, and then you're all divided into teams and each team has a team leader. Now your team leader has been instructed something by the teacher. Your team leader comes to your team and gives like vague information and starts working on something else that has been assigned to him or her. Then while you have almost completed the project, or when you're in the middle of the project, your team leader comes for a check and realizes that you have been doing wrong, and then he or she tells you all like, this is not the way what was expected, I wanted you to work in another way. Then obviously you'll all be frustrated, you'll be irritated, because one, the team leader did not provide proper information to you, did not communicate what was required, vaguely gave some information, and then just left. And now that you have worked so much onto your project or assignment, now changing it all over again is not possible or could be challenging, because you also might be having a deadline or a timeline to finish the project or the assignment. And this way conflict could arise because of communication between you and your team leader. The second one is structure. So structure is where we are talking about, where it could be a work structure, it could be the structure in which you have designed your work, and so on. So conflict based on structure is for can be seen in the group of people who are working together on a particular project. Like, for example, let's say you're selling perfumes for an organization, and your coworker has to approve all the places where you would be selling, and all the information, whatever information you have to give them, and who would be purchasing your products, and should you meet the managers or should you meet the uh, the assistant managers, or should you directly go and contact the customers who are buying your product? How does it work? So if your co-worker does not provide proper information, or comes back and tells you, this is not the way to do it, don't approach the customers directly, I'm not okay with it, you should only work with the managers or something, and then is not able to uh, provide a proper appraisal for you based on the work what you're doing, again conflict will arise, because one, you're trying to do everything according to the process, but your co-worker is disapproving. So here we are seeing the organization structure basically, and he does not approve it, hence you and your performance is somewhere lacking or not as expected, and then conflict. This is one place where there is conflict, and the co-worker is inviting conflict, or your manager is inviting conflict. The third condition is personal variable. Now, personal variable could be personality types, it could be your values, it could be your morals, and so on. So, certain personality types, like for example, let's say individuals who are highly have this authoritarian leadership, they may lead to potential conflict. So, we are not used to somebody ordering us, probably. Okay, if that is my nature, if I've always been in a uh, democratic kind of an environment, and suddenly somebody is trying to boss around me, then obviously there will be conflict that will come up between me and the person who's trying to boss around me, because of the differences in the personal variable. It could also be conflict can arise due to differences in the values. Maybe my values are different from your values. I may not accept being or doing something which is not right according to me, but according to you it may be right, and I feel no, that is wrong. So their differences could also lead to conflict. So value differences, again, it comes with the diverse issues such as prejudice, disagreement, or reward system, or it could also be contributions towards certain things from one group to another group. So the first stage is incompatibility. Because of incompatibility due to various reasons, such as it could be communication, it could be the structure, it could be the personal variables, there we are inviting conflicts. Their differences can start the conflict process. Then going to the second stage, cognition and personalization. Now, conflict can be either perceived or it could be felt. So felt is something, you can say personalization, you're feeling the conflict, and cognition could be like perceived, how you're perceiving the situation, and a conflict is arising because of that. So uh, because conflict is perceived does not mean that it is not personalized or it is personalized. If it's determined that the incompatibility exists between the both parties, then conflict definitely is happening or developing. So if you and your new manager are having a disagreement, for example, they may perceive it but not be personally affected by it. So your manager is not agreeing with you. You are aware that you are not agreeing with the manager. You are aware of it cognitively. You can understand it. You're thinking about it, but you're not feeling anything about it. Okay, so but you're not worried about the disagreement because you feel, okay, we are talking about an issue, everybody have their own opinions and there is a disagreement, so it is perceived conflict. Now if you are understanding that, okay, now this disagreement is leading to a next level, because of the disagreement maybe you're not talking to each other, maybe you're not interacting properly with each other, or just making faces, or you can feel that you can feel the differences that are coming up between two individuals. So that is you are internalizing it, and that is affecting you emotionally, internally. So that is the felt conflict. So once there is incompatibility, then you are either perceiving the conflict or you're feeling the conflict. And after this, you move on to the next stage, which is intention. So intentions include the conflict handling intentions. So intentions are decisions to act in a specific way. So they operate as a intervene between people's perception and feeling and their outward conduct as well. Now, there are 5 conflict handling intentions, and since we are doing it, this is also conflict resolution technique, which we can talk about when simultaneously when we are doing the intentions part. So the 5 conflict handling intentions are can be categorized into 2 dimensions: cooperativeness and assertiveness. Okay. So cooperativeness is something which one party strives to fulfill the concern of the other party, where you are trying to cooperate to understand what the other party requires. Assertiveness is where one party attempts to satisfy his or own her needs and worries, where you're trying to be, okay, no, this is what has to be done, so it has to be done. This is what I want, so it has to be done. So that way. Now, the 5 conflict handling intentions are competing, collaborating, avoiding, accommodating, and compromising. So, just to sum up in brief before we go in detail, competition or competing is something like I win, you lose. So, there's this one party who says like I win and you lose. The other party might say the same thing. Collaboration is both the parties are coming together with this notion that I win, you also win. Then avoiding is there are no winners or losers over here. Accommodating is I lose, you win, or you win, I lose. So something like that. Somewhere you're trying to accommodate, you're trying to adjust yourself. Then compromising is let's both of us accommodate. Or if I am losing, you'll also lose. Or let's create a win-win kind of a situation, or where both of us are not losing. I agree on something and you agree on something, and both disagree on few of the things which is not acceptable. So in detail, now please understand these, you can write these as a conflict resolution technique also. So in detail, if we want to go competing, so here we are going to see whether competing is one party seeks to satisfy his or own interest regardless of the impact that happens in the other party. So it gains like upper hand in terms of confrontation, in terms of work, in terms of pushing one another individually or in a group in the priority at the expense of others. You don't care. You just have to win in this particular situation. So if you are looking at this particular graph, then competition is being more assertive and uncooperative. competition falls in this particular graph. So if we are competing, that means you are being assertive and you're not being cooperative. Collaborating. If you're collaborating, when one party or both desire to fully, you're trying to satisfy each other's concerns, which involves the conflict. So you're here trying to discuss about the issue, you're trying to come up with a solution, and we are trying to understand what works best for both the parties. So the goal over here is like to have the win-win kind of a situation that benefits both the parties involved in this particular conflict. So again, if you're looking at the graph at the X and the Y axis, so here it is you're being assertive as well as cooperative. You're not bending down, you are trying to satisfy what you want, but at the same time, you're also willing to accommodate the other person's requirements. The third one is avoiding. So here, one party either withdraws or suppresses the conflict once it is recognized. So the moment you realize that the conflict is arising, you just move away from that situation. You don't want to get involved, or you just forget about that and you just move on, carry on. So this approach tries to, where you're trying to be neutral, or you refuse to participate actively in the conflict resolution methods, thinking that, the conflict will solve all by itself with time. Sometimes we tend to do that, right? But I would say it's not the best way to deal with the conflict, because you never know whether you're just forgetting everything or you're just storing it and making it big, and then waiting for it to pop out all at once. So this is basically, avoiding is done to satisfy someone else and keep the relationship of the other parties intact, avoiding fights and maintain the relationship. So this can be termed as unassertiveness and uncooperative, and as well as uncooperative, because you never know when this might come and have a wrong, can become a bigger conflict. The next one is accommodating. So here one party seeks to appease the opponent once the conflict is recognized. So here your own goal and the other person's goal is understood. They would like to adjust each other, see how they both can achieve their goals. And again, this is done to satisfy somebody else relationship and keep the relationship in place. So this can be termed as unassertiveness and cooperative. The last one is compromising. When you're trying to compromise, you are trying to give up on something to resolve on the conflict. So here it's not like you're winning, you're trying to accommodate, you could say. You're trying to win, at the same time lose. You're trying to compromise, come to a single point where both the parties are agreeing on certain things that works best in that particular situation. So you could say, like, bargaining or compromising. You can see all these when there are issues between workers and the higher level managers. So this particular dimension, it lies in the middle of the scale, where it comes like you're also trying to be assertive, you're trying to be cooperative at the same time, and trying to see what works best for each other. Then so this was about intention. The next one is about behavior. The next stage is behavior. So here in the stage one, you're seeing how the conflict begins, how the conflict grows, whether you're trying to handle the conflict, how are you trying to resolve the conflict, what are your intentions. Are your intentions is to highlight the conflict, heighten the conflict, or your intentions are to, solve the conflict, then your behavior. So behavior is where the conflict is very
Priyanka,
much.
may I ask a question?
Sure.
Uh, I was just trying to understand this from the organization's perspective,
Mhm.
and most of these roles of the first stage one, two, and three,
Mhm.
are being played by HR, or who could be an ideal person who plays these roles? Because generally conflicts comes between two people in the same group, and
Mhm.
somebody has to come and resolve it. So
Mhm.
that somebody could be an HR, or who could be an ideal person in the context, because persons in conflict would be biased, right?
Mhm.
So which would be the ideal person, or according to you, or the framing of this, who could be an ideal person to solve this conflicts in the context of the stage one, two, three? Three is a better one, as you said, compromising if both want to work. But
Mhm.
who, in the organization standpoint, have this uh, role or responsibility to do so, if I may ask?
Okay. That answer I will give it to you when we are doing the negotiation part. I got your question. You are saying like who would be responsible for, resolving the conflict at stage one, two, and three, right? So when we are doing it, you'll get your answers to that.
Okay.
So the next stage is behavior. When we are talking about behavior again, it's like, how are the employees or the parties showing their behavior, actions, or reactions to the conflict that has arisen. And these behaviors can be sometimes overt behaviors, like attempt to verbally abuse them, or trying to show that there is something that both of you disagree on some one thing or the other, and you're trying to understand how the reaction of the other person is, and so on. And um, again, overt behavior, parties behavior, and others reaction could also be something like where a party, you are trying to demand something from the other person, and the other person does not agree with you, and they start arguing on something, and then somebody tries to threaten one another, and so on. So like Jagdish was asking, conflict arises within the group. So one part, you're both working on the same project, you're trying to, there is disagreement with both of you, and you're not willing to compromise, collaborate, or anything. And then, you're showing this conflict. Everybody knows that you don't get along well with each other, and you start arguing when you're trying to present something because you disagree with each other's point of view, and so on. Now, if the conflict is resolved, what will happen? And if the conflict is not resolved, what will happen? That is seen in the outcome, which is the last stage. So, outcome of the conflict could either be functional or dysfunctional. So, functional conflict definitely increases the group performance, and dysfunctional conflict decreases the group performance. So, functional conflict occurs when conflict is constructive. That is, you are learning something out of it. It may be hard for you to understand that, okay, there is a disagreement between us, but somewhere maybe it is for the well-being of the organization or for my sake, and somehow you're trying to learn something, and something good is going to come out of that conflict. That is functional conflict. Now, and a functional conflict could also be like, okay, there is something that is happening, and the good is being coming out of this disagreement, because if this disagreement did not happen, maybe we wouldn't have looked at the issue from a different perspective, and the group may close on agreeing on something where the members speak up, and it's a positive thing which increases the group performance overall. Now, the dysfunctional conflict could reduce the group performance. This is because, there is disagreement, and neither of the parties are willing to understand what the other person is saying, and it is just there is no solution or proper solution coming out to the conflict that has arisen, and people just start hating each other, or people just don't want to talk to each other and not get along well and are not able to make proper decisions. So everybody is doing their own things. So obviously that decreases the group performance. Now, the other part of conflict, so this was about the conflict process. Moving on to the conflict resolution techniques, and other part of the conflict resolution techniques will be like, sometimes, you know, the conflict may not be resolved. The differences between the individuals, the groups in the teams, cannot be resolved. People will face conflict at some point of time in their careers while they are working in their organizations. So we cannot avoid conflict, but we need to understand how we can resolve the conflicts. So as a result, you know, dispute resolution has become one important part in the workplaces. So there are, in any organization, so Jagdish, I'll be answering your questions here. In an organization, there is a certain set, which is certain, let's say, employees who are hired, uh, or let's not say hired, who are a part of this conflict resolution groups or dispute groups, where you could say, where conflict arises and it goes to that extent where it is not able to resolve on its own within the group, then it goes to this dispute group. This dispute group, or the grievance cell, what we call in some of the organizations, or the dispute groups, where what we call in some of the organization, consist of some of the senior members from the organization who are there to resolve the conflicts that arise, and which are highly prevalent, and which have gone to an extent that it has not been able to be able to resolve on its own. Now, so unresolved disagreements can have negative influence on productivity and collaboration. And as a result, like in any organization, learning how to cope with disagreements is a very critical part. So there are numerous techniques and procedures that can be chosen from when you're trying to solve the particular conflict. Now, coming to the question of, in the first stage, 1, 2, and 3, who should resolve the conflict? Is it HR, or is it within the group that arises? So HR is there to resolve the disputes. HR themselves might take a part in dispute resolution, or HR might assign a team who would be looking into the grievances or dispute resolution techniques. But first, initially, if the conflict has arisen within a team who are working on a particular project, if the conflict is not able to resolve on its own within both the co-workers who are involved, the next step is for the team leader to be involved in this particular issue. If the conflict is still not being able to resolve in spite of the intervention of the team leader, the manager can intervene. And still, if there is conflict, and the manager, somewhere the coworker feels that the manager is also part of this thing, and they're not able to do well on their part, or the manager is not able to listen to you, then the employee may reach out to the HR and discuss his problems in the form of a dispute, telling that I'm having a dispute. I had raised it to my team leader. My team leader had raised it to my manager, and I have not been satisfied by the solution that is being given to me. Hence, this issue is coming to the HR. Now, there is a whole lot of grievance procedure that happens. So dispute, once it's called a dispute, it's generally not to term it as a dispute, it takes some time. Okay, so first it's a conflict, then conflicts turn into dispute. So there is a proper a whole thing on grievance procedure or grievance redressal process. If you can just go through that, you'll understand the process, how the conflict starts, which turns into disputes, and how it turns into a grievance. So that will give an explanation. And to just explain you in short, so each has a time period of a time limit. So once it goes to the team leader, he has to resolve it within so and so time. If it is not resolved, then it goes to the next higher person. So it could be the manager. If the manager has been given so and so time to resolve this issue, if this issue is still not being able to is not being resolved within so much of in the given time period, then it goes to the grievance procedure. So the HR might give like a 3 working day or something, and that's how the grievance procedure goes on. So has have I answered your question, Jagdish?
Thanks for that, Priyanka, but you raised a couple of more questions now.
Okay, all right.
I'm very sorry. Just in the context only, because it is a generic thing.
Uh-huh. No
Because you
problem.
brought up something in the earlier classes also, and now in this also saying in the initial time when you started off saying there is a temporary group like a teacher forming groups and few things of that sort where a temporary setup is done, not in an organizational front, right? In that context, now, a conflict, a dispute, a grievance, even when there are different words which are used, the effect of it would be personally felt onto that the fourth stage, which you felt more on the behavior kind of a thing, where the purpose is being diluted. If I
Hmm.
could go to the second slide.
Yeah.
So, who would be the one who would even identify this conflict process? Because somebody has to identify this process, right? Like, where is it identified? Because you have nailed down all the stages there,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe in the context of the book, not you in the sense of you. So, where is the identification? I completely miss that part in that context because it is showing all the reasons behind how this may have happened, but it is not showing what exactly it is or why is it happened in the first place. So, is there any way which I have missed or something which I really don't understand? Because you are offering a solution without a problem, or maybe you have a stages in which you have to go through for it. But what is the problem? Who is defining it? How is it being identified?
Yeah, that's what I said. No, see, first, why is the problem arise? How has the problem arise? So if you're trying to, it comes in the conflict handling intentions or conflict resolution techniques, or the next one, what we are going to do, negotiation or bargaining. So that is when you tend to understand why and from where has the conflict arisen in the first place. How does the conflict begin in the first place? That's what the first stage talks about. It could
Okay.
be due to lack of communication, it could be due to improper structure, it could be due to personal variables. So these are some of the 3 broad categories what we are talking about, and conflict could arise because of these reasons. So a simple example, okay, I am communicating something to you, telling you that the manager has told so and so and things, and you have to work on this thing, and I forget to tell you that the deadline is by tomorrow. Okay. Now, tomorrow the manager comes and asks you, Jagdish, have you completed this work? I had informed Priyanka to tell you. So you'll say, yeah, Priyanka had informed me about this, but she never told me the deadline of it. Then the manager will be like, no, I don't know all that. I don't know what she has communicated, but it was clearly told that you have to complete it. I haven't got it. Now I'm not, I have to, probably mark you down for not completing your work on time. Now, here the conflict starts between you and me, because you will come and ask me, Priyanka, you told me that manager had told us things, but you forgot to give me the deadline. I might be like, oh, maybe I forgot about it, or maybe, I can say, no, I told you, I think I told you, you didn't hear about it, and so on. And then, the conflict between both of us started, whether I disagree or agree with whatever you're saying. You'll say, please go and tell the manager that you missed out on telling me the deadline for the project or the assignment what is given. Then I'll be like, why should I go and tell? I've clearly told, it was the manager's responsibility to tell you. Why should I come and tell you? I must have forgotten, or I told you, you didn't hear me properly. So, this is how the conflict begins.
Fair enough. It is not documented. That is the whole problem.
As in,
As in somebody is saying something verbally, but it is not being written somewhere wherein the conflict is, the source of the conflict is that. Because somebody is not clearly indicating what is to be done, because you have narrated this example not once but twice
Yes.
in the course of our conversation today itself,
Yes.
in the class. But
Hmm.
I appreciate you giving highlights about this. But the only thing is, had it not been simple enough to put that in writing where you know what is what, instead of assuming all these things?
It's not assuming. See, that's what we are saying. These are three broad categories. Now, communication could only be in terms of verbal, you're saying. It's not documented. Now, if you go and read in some of the books, they'll give you with examples. So these could be the places where conflict could arise. Conflict could arise due to disagreements on so and so issues and all that. Now, I was just talking about verbal communication. Conflict can arise between the written communication also. I am trying to communicate something via email to you, and I'm not able to put it across in a way, or you perceive it incorrectly and you do something else. Conflict could also arise because of that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Right? Okay. So we were doing this, the conflict resolution techniques. Yeah. So apart from these five, the other things that I think it's clearly mentioned in your books as well, the material what is being given to you. So other tips and conflict resolution techniques could be: do not negotiate when you're angry, focus on the problem, not on the person, be calm, be flexible, do not be aggressive, accept what the other person is saying, or try to make it take it on a lighter note, or try to use humor, try to use appreciation, focus on the areas that could benefit both of you. So these are some of the other conflict resolution techniques that can be used. Now, negotiation. Negotiation and conflict are closely related because negotiation often resolves conflict, and there is a process in the negotiation also. It's not like negotiation you're just trying to negotiate something and the conflict is resolved. No, there's a proper process, a structure that is followed in negotiation. So the first part of negotiation is preparing and planning. So, able to view the picture. So you, as a negotiator, if you are in a conflict, or if you're acting as a negotiator between two parties who are in the conflict, then first you must identify and specify what are the negotiation goals during this stage of planning and preparation. So you need to fully understand what is that you want from this negotiation, what does the other party want from this negotiation, and what are you negotiating on, what are the objectives, what are your demands, what are your requirements, are there any hidden objectives with this negotiation which the other party should not know, or are there any hidden objectives by the other party which you are not aware? How do you think you would settle this? Do you want to bring in a third party, or do you want to just both of you sit and negotiate on this particular thing? And where do you want to do it? What place do you want to do it? What time do you want to do it? Because those can also create conflict again. I'm not okay with this time, you are okay with this time, and so on. So negotiation is during negotiation, the planning and preparation is very much important. One thing that is always done in this stage is the BATNA system. So Roger Fisher and William Ury came up with this BATNA system, which is an acronym for best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So while planning and preparing for the negotiation, you need to keep all the alternatives that are available, all the from your end, and also be prepared, like what is that out of all of this conflict, this negotiation, out of this experience you're going to take away, and what the other person perceives, what you want, and so on. The next one is defining the ground rules. Very important. Before you go to the negotiation, you need to understand during the planning stage itself, like what are the ground rules that you would want to set for the negotiation. Then both you and the other party should be in agreement to the questions like, who will do the negotiation? Should I and you together do it, or do you want to involve the third party? These are the ground rules. You need to make it very clear before the negotiation process. Where will the negotiation take place? Will it be in the office? Will it be in the lawyer's office? Or will it be at your place or my place, or a common place where, you know, everybody should be visible, seen, and so on? Where will there be a time constraints placed during this negotiation? So do we need to finish this in 1 hour? Is it like half a day, 1 day, 1 month, whatever it is? You know, both the parties should agree on this thing as well. Will there be any limits to the negotiation? Will there be any agreements, suppose, which cannot be agreed upon at that point of time? Then what is the next step? What is the process to handle the disagreements that comes up during the negotiation? So these are the ground rules which has to be set in the negotiation process. The next is the classification and justification. So following the extent of initial processes, this stage can give you the explanation and justification. So you are trying to understand the viewpoints, you are trying to clarify where you're coming from, you're trying to understand the other person's viewpoints, they are trying to justify their viewpoints, and you know, you are trying to educate each one another on the perspectives. You're trying to see it from their perspective, you're trying to see from your perspective. You're getting a clarity on why this conflict has arisen, when did it start, from how did it begin, who was responsible for it. Or you know, again, if you say sometimes, you know, there's also confrontation which comes when questions like who was responsible and all these things come. So you need to be very clear about it and clarify and justify. So I reacted this way because of this, I wanted clarity on this particular thing, so I brought up this particular issue. So each party may use, you know, this time to reconsider their bargaining or the negotiation tactics that could work out for both of them. And sometimes during this justification and clarification, there might be temper issues that might pop up because you're trying to justify and the other person is not trying to agree. And again, you know, so either one of you have to understand or like set up the ground rules that nobody can get angry. I will put my points, you put your points, you have given your justification, I have given my justification. Now let's see what is the resolution we can come up to. If it's between two people, if the third party is involved, they can intervene here and take it further from there. Now, the next step is bargaining and problem solving. Now, some of you might have this question like, what is the difference between bargaining and negotiation? So bargaining is about focusing on who is right. And it is more of like competitiveness where there is a win and a lose situation. Negotiation is more negotiation is more about focusing on what is right. So, Sunita, please mute. Bargaining is about who is right and negotiation is about what is right. So negotiation is more of the cooperative type where there is a win-win situation. Now, coming to bargaining and problem solving, this is when you're giving and take, where the you know, giving and taking of the bargaining or the negotiation process takes place. So you try to achieve the goal set during the preparation and the planning process, and where you will present your argument, strengthen your position using the facts obtained during preparation process. And you know, the negotiating partners also benefit from listening, and you try to come up with a problem, with a solution to the problem that has occurred. The next stage is closure and implementation. Sunita, Ms. Sunita, please mute. So once an agreement has been met, this is the stage in which the procedure needs to be developed to implement and monitor the terms of the agreement. They pull all the information into the format that's acceptable to both the parties and they formalize it, and you know, and the entire process. Now, what are the strategies used in bargaining? I would say like two: distributive approach and the integrative approach. So when we are talking about the distributive view of bargaining or the negotiation, this is a traditional fixed pie approach. Negotiators here see the situation as a pie and they divide it between them. Each tries to get more of the pie and win. Like, for example, managers may compete over shares of the budget. If the marketing gets like a 10% increment in its budget, then another department will decrease their budget by 10%. So that, you know, you're distributing it so that there is no more or less here. So the R&D department will tell that next time, you know, I will take the extra 10%, and you know, you can take the you can cut down on 10% the next time. So this is distributive approach. The integrative approach is more creative approach, and here both the parties look for the ways to integrate their goals under like a larger umbrella. So they say like, you know, they more of go for a win-win approach. It's not like today I take 10, tomorrow you take 10. It's not that way. They'll be like, okay, let's come up with a solution where both of us get like 10%, or let's go for like 5% and 5%, rather than if it is only 10% what is required, and see where we can help each other out. So this was about conflict resolution process, bargaining, and negotiation. Now, moving on to the next unit, human resource practices and organization change. So here we will be looking at selection and placement practices. Ms. Sunita, I think, please mute. Now, when we are talking about the selection and placement practices, the first part is the recruitment process. Now, in the recruitment process, first, if I have to recruit a person, I need to understand why is the recruitment required? Like, is there a vacant position? Am I not able to are my existing employees not able to meet the demands that are required? So when there is a demand, then a vacant position is created. So the recruitment process begins with an assessment on the number and the type of vacant position that requires to be filled, as well as individuals, how many individuals are required to fill that vacant position, and what are the skills required to fill the vacant position. So now, how do I fill this vacant position? Through the source, which can be internal or external. So internal source is like, I'm trying to fill the vacant position within my organization by advertising within the organization. Probably I'm bringing in another person from another process to this process because they are access to IJPs, or that is internal job postings, or through you know, just putting up an advertisement and see whoever wants, who are looking for upskilling or upgrading their career in a way or the, or looking for promotions. That external source could be from outside, like again through advertising to agencies, or putting up paper ads, or profiles, Naukri and other job portals, and so on. So in either way, advertisement is the first step. So in the advertisement, the job description, qualification, experiences, as well as compensation, maybe compensation include, you can maybe include the compensation, and the other terms and condition can all be, should all be actually put in the job description during the advertisement. So the other requirements could be like, you know, should have a two-wheeler, should be willing to travel, and so on. And a personal selection is done, which is a process by which business determines who will be allowed to work for them and who will not be allowed to work for them. Ms. Sunita, please mute. Just give me a minute. Okay. Moving on to the next one, the shortlisting or screening of application. Now that you have put an advertisement, obviously you're going to get a lot of applications, right? It could be either one, the internal or external. So it is always recommended to do a preliminary interview to save time. So due to like time constraint and budget constraint, it may not be possible to interview every application that comes to you. Like for a job application, the HR might receive, there's only like 2 vacant position, but the resumes, the application that come in may be like 200 to 300. So it is not humanly possible for the HR to sit and go through all the resumes and all that. So as a result, the preliminary screening is required because the HR cannot interview all the 200 candidates. Now, the organizations have come up with this process where it's called ATS, or the automatic tracking system, which tracks all your resumes, identifies the keywords, and then takes down the and then shortlist the resume. And if you have given it to an external consultancy kind of a thing, they can do the preliminary screening based on whatever the job requirements are, and then shortlist based on the attributions, based on the education qualifications or experience that are required for a particular job, and look into other criteria also, like the emotional stability, temperament, if it is based on the job, whatever is required, and have the preliminary screening. Now, when we are doing the initial screening, when the applicant applies for a job, the initial selection happens where the application forms, background checks are done, and substantive selections happen where written tests, performance tests, these are basic process of interviews, you could say. Then, in the substantive selection, written test, performance test, interviews are conducted, and in the contingent selection, drug test, background check, background verification, reference checks are done. I'll talk about this in this one. So the selection methods include like interviews, reference and biographical data, physical ability test, cognitive ability test, personality inventories, work samples, honesty tests, and drug tests, and etc. So it is important to understand what are the characteristics or the traits and abilities that are required for this particular job that have opened up. And then that can be followed with an interview, and that can be followed with the other types of tests. So if you're looking at the interview can again be of many types: structured, unstructured, situational interview, behavior interviews, and so on. So if you're coming with like a structured interview, so it is always advisable to have a structured set of structured interview. Structured interview is where you are already having a set of questions based on the requirements of the job. So based on the answers given, you can mark the candidate accordingly. So and structured interview also helps the interviewer to avoid certain prohibited questions, you could say. Like for example, asking a woman like, are you married, or asking a married woman like, are you planning to have children? So these are all not required to be asked in an interview. Then Apart from this, there is not just one round of interview. I'm sure all of you are aware there are multiple rounds of interview in an organization. So it can start from screening, a basic first round of interview, to the second round of interview, which could be technical round, which could be the third round, could be something else. The fourth round could be operational round, and then again the HR round. You must have heard of these things. So firms or organizations do multiple rounds of screening before they hire a candidate. Uh, the candidate is assessed on their attitude, their talent, their ability to answer questions, and so on. And in the behavior interview, if you're taking, the interviewer might again ask the candidate to share some experiences that reflect upon some of the experiences on the situations they have given, or they might give in the situation interview. The manager or the interviewer may create a situation and interview the candidate on how they would handle the situation, or how. And they could also include the behavior component on the situation. They might create a hypothetical situation and understand how the interviewee would handle the particular situation. Then the next one is selection of tests. So tests could be like physical ability test, cognitive test. So test understanding tests help the organization or the interviewer to understand the applicant's personality, values, motivation, to requirement of the job. How much do they really want this job? How long are they going to stick with the organization? So tests also include like aptitude test, if it is a technical related job, and otherwise it could be the personality test. If it could the personality test could be like to understand, or the cognitive ability test could be to understand how this person would interact with the co-workers, if it is directly with the customers, and if sometimes the customers are not always nice to the customer support agent, so they might abuse them. So how are you going to handle that particular situation? Are you so I many things. So there's like there are many tests like international personality item pool, some of the personality wonderline are some of the tools that are used to measure an applicant's personality, attitude, interpersonal skills, and how they would be able to handle a particular situation. Then other tests would be like cognitive tests, could include general intelligence test if the hiring is taking place for like defense or something, security, national security, and so on. The intelligence test could be part of it. Work sample test. Work sample is nothing but where it is mostly used for mechanics, carpenters, and all that. And actual the whatever is required for the applicant to do on a job, they are asked to demonstrate and show how they are going to work on it. So that is work sample. So basically the applicant's ability to perform a particular specific job duties and responsibilities given in that particular job. So that is work sample. So like a hands-on experience. So mechanics, carpenters, electricians, the skilled workers whom we call them welders. So for them work samples can be given. Then physical ability test could be for those to measure strength, endurance, muscular movement, in terms of security, in terms of bouncers, for all these things, army, navy, defense, police. Physical ability test could be given. And aptitude test is to measure the applicant's ability to learn new skills. Personality I've already spoken. Then coming to the honesty and integrity test. So it is integrity is very much important in an organization. So to measure applicants undesirable behavior such as like lying, stealing, taking drugs, because alcohol abuse, substance abuse is strictly prohibited in the organization. So Integrity and honesty tests can be done. So two types of tests assess honesty and integrity. One is the overt integrity test, where explicit questions about honesty, including attitude and behavior regarding theft, are asked. And the other one is personality oriented integrity test, which measures the psychological concept based on dependability and respect for authority. Then the next one is about the background checks. Background checks or reference checks are a way for the employers to verify the accurate information that an interviewee presents in their applications, that is their resume and the applications. So information gathered in the background check can include the previous employment history, their experiences, their education, their in India, we generally, unless and until it's a high profile when again coming back to security job, nobody checks for the criminal records or so on. Or if it is, let's say, if it is for a driver's job here, then we do the driving license or driving records check, where is there any case of hit and run, or is this person fine, and so on. So background checks can be done on all these things, and also the your residential address where you stay. Nowadays, the background check is being given to has been outsourced to a third party, where they come in and they also check with the neighbors how is your attitude, how is your personality, and how well do you go along with the neighbors, and so on. So employers, before they do the background check, they must always obtain a written consent from the applicant before the background check, and information they should also maintain that the information collected during the background check will be confidential and that should be relevant for the job as well. So suppose for a technical engineer who just has to go and sit on the office and come, need not do a driving record test. That's not required for him. So these are some of the things that are required during the background checks. Now, or the interview selection methods. Now, moving on to the next one, the principles of interviewing. So, Mungo Fraser's came up with this 5-point plan, which is also known as pentagonal peg, during which is required for the framework of interviewers, what they have to observe during the process of interviewing. So the 5 principles developed by Mungo Fraser are first impression and physical makeup. So you must have heard of this phrase, like first impression is the last impression, and so on. So how well are you impressing the interviewer? How well are you dressed up? Your evaluation will start from the time you walk into the organization, even when you're waiting for your turn, and you're also being observed. Are you mingling with the other person, other candidates who have come for the interview? What kind of questions you're asking the other candidates? What information have you gathered so far? With the moment you walk in, are you greeting the interviewer? How well are you dressed up? So all those things are also part of an interview process. Then the second is the qualification and the expectations from you. The third is how well you're able to answer the questions to the best of your abilities. How well they also check your ability check in terms of like cognitive abilities, probably question you based on different scenarios. Then your motivation to work, what drives you, how long are you going to stick with the organization? You must you will most of the time you're asked this question: 5 years down the line, where do you want to see yourself? Or 10 years down the line, where do you want to see yourself? What will you do? Certain situations, then adjustments, certain scenarios are given. How well are you able to accommodate into this organization? Many a times when we move from one organization to other, there are are cultural differences. There are, each organization do not function in a similar way. So will you be able to accommodate or adjust yourself in my organization, or different scenarios are given in terms of the team and how they would react. Apart from that, Edwin Flipper came up with the three principles where about the interview, how it has to be conducted. First one is the preparation, second is the setting, and the third is the conduct of the interview. So preparation is how are you going to prepare for the interview. It could be for the interviewer as well as the interviewee. To the interviewer, what are the set of questions you would be asking? So that would be a structured interview. And how many questions should you be asking? And what if it is a structured interview? Again, is it like, are you going to ask open-ended question or a closed-ended question? Open-ended question is again like, are you asking questions and waiting for an interview to give a long answer? Or a closed-ended question could also be like yes, no, maybe. So preparation for the interview. Then setting up the interview. When you're setting the interview place, so you need to make sure that it is not an open, like there are like 10 people sitting outside, you're just having a table and a chair and you're interviewing and everybody can hear what the other person is saying. No, you need to have a separate cabin. You need to ensure that there is enough lighting. You need to ensure that it is soundproof. You need to ensure there is a proper table between the interviewer and the interviewee, and whatever are the requirements that are needed to conduct the interview. And again, the setting, like I said, there are different kinds of interviews. So there is situation interview, there's behavior interview, there's observational round, where you are put in another round and you're sitting in the next room, and you're trying to observe how this person is going to act in a particular situation. So you're sitting in a room which can be viewed only from a one side. The other person cannot see the other side. Then the in-basket method, if we are using that, then setting up the entire interview process. Then conducting interview, again going back to the same thing, the different types of questions, how many rounds are you going to have, how are you going to calculate the results. Once the interview is conducted, once the interview is over, what are you communicating to the person. Then another thing I forgot to mention, this reminds me, is when we were doing the selection method, the drug test, substance abuses. So very important in organizations where you have to, before hiring, you need to understand the whether this person is under the influence of drug, or do they take drugs, or yes or no. Now, this is to avoid work accidents. This is to avoid other behavioral symptoms that come up during if you have been hired in the organization. And the type of test that can be done is the urine analysis or the hair follicle testing. These are two, and again, blood test can also be a part of it. Medical examination and drug tests are mandatorily done in the hospitals if you're being hired or if you go for interviews over there, and also for hotels. If you're working in a hotel, these tests are also done over there. Apart from the drug test, the other tests are also done, like hepatitis A, B. These tests are also done. Moving on to the job design. Now, so we have seen the interview process so far. Okay, what is the selection method? How many types of interviews can be done? What the preliminary interview, and so on. Now, job design. So if you're working in the HR field, or if you're working as a manager and there is a vacancy and you need to inform the HR that there is a vacant position, the HR would like to know what is the requirement for the position, what are the skills required for that position. So job design is something that comes. So job design is defined as a process of deciding on the content of the job in terms of duties and responsibilities, on the methods to be used in carrying out the job in terms of technique, system, procedure, and on the relationship that should exist between the job holder and a superior, subordinate, and colleagues. So basically, you're trying to understand in the job design, you will find job description and job specification. Job description would include like what are the duties and responsibilities, and specification would include like the qualifications required, experience required, and the skill set required. So job design will include job description and job specifications, and also include who would you be reporting to, which branch you would be working at, what are the requirements should you need, like the skill set required, computer knowledge, basic Excel, and so and so and so. And also, if it is a traveling related job, like let's say a delivery boy executive job, then he or she should have a two-wheeler, and all these things. Who would they be reporting to, which branch they would be reporting to, and so on. So if we are looking at the goals of job design, is one, why do we need to have job design? To meet the organization requirements like higher productivity, operational efficiency, quality of product and services, and also to satisfy the need of the individual employee like interest, challenge, achievement, and accomplishment. Now, so randomly I can't hire people, right? So why we need job design is for these things. Then talking about compensation and rewards, diversity management, and closure. So when we are talking about compensation and rewards, so every employee should be, in the job design itself, you can include with regards to the compensation, you can include what are the reward system that comes across. So rewards can be given for skill development and organizational performance, which focus on teamwork, collaboration, and accountability. Assist employees in identifying new abilities to develop in order for them to learn the new abilities, put them to work for company. Then incentives can be given for meeting the targets. The profit sharing can be given. Incentive can include like profit sharing, gain, then skill-based remuneration, etc. So compensation can also be included in the job design at times. Talking about diversity management, now when you're hiring people initially, the diversity management consisted something like having even not discriminating between men and women. Now if you're looking into some of the companies, when you're filling up their application forms, you'll find like about the gender, like male, female, or trans, or do not want to disclose. So this is, again, we are talking about diversity management here. So diversity is meant to avoid discriminating between various things. So this was initially what it was, but now it's more to that. If you talk about diversity today, we talk in terms of like in a more let's say like a broader perspective, why we need a diverse workplace, because diversity is a critical component of successful problem solving and innovative. Through diversity we tend to have more innovative and effective solution for the organization which gives. This is because one person may look at one thing from one perspective, and the other person may notice the other blind spots and try to complement with the other skills that are possible. Then the closure or the close. So this stage is important, that indicates that the interview is coming to an end. This means the interviewer should should indicate what are the future actions or the possible future actions that will be taken. The candidate should always be informed whether he will be selected, whether he's selected or not selected. So most of the times, we just keep waiting. Okay, am I selected? They'll say you can go for the day and we'll get back to you. This is what the HR says. It is always important to communicate to the employee that even if they are not selected. And don't directly say like, you're not selected and so on. Communicate it in a certain way, like, we had a large number of applicants who were equally competing. Unfortunately, we would not be able to go forward with your application because we for so and so reason. That's something the organization can see how they would want to communicate, but give it, close the interview process for the candidate. Now, once when you're closing, you can also communicate to the interviewee that, we will get back to you in certain number of days based on the interview process and so on. Once you inform the candidate, then comes the evaluation process of the interview, the selection and the placement process. So you must have now the vacant position are 2, and you must have interviewed like 10 people out of 10. So employers may choose to understand various through the various screening methods that have been used. Like the employers need to set a benchmark for selecting the process. So whoever is able to meet the benchmark and is able to do extremely well, those candidates can be selected, and they can start with the other hiring process, the next process. Like once they are selected, give them an appointment letter, and that's the placement process. Have one induction orientation, and then comes the training, and that's how the employee life cycle moves on from there. Now, let me see how much I can cover about training and development, and then I will, we can close it. So talking about training and development. So like I said, now we have selected the employee. So first we gave a job, we gave an advertisement there because there was a requirement. Then we have conducted interviews, we have gone through the various selection process, we have hired the candidate, we have given appointment to the candidate, the induction and orientation is done. Now the next process is training the candidate. So the term training refers to the process of imparting skills and knowledge. It includes physical and mental abilities necessary for a specific job. So the training is an important component of the organization growth. And since there is a link between training and employees' performance, or which will again result into increased organizational output, training is extremely important. So recognizing the value of training, all businesses have started prioritizing on this to fill the gap that is required. Now there are different types of trainings that are used. There are different selection practices and devices that are used. So if we look at the importance of training, why is training important? Training is important, one, because it is useful to increase efficiency and reduce wastage. It increases morality. It gives a better industrial relationship. It helps the employer to understand what are the requirements, interviewee to or the selected job candidate to understand what is the requirement of the organization. Then maybe you're using a new technology where the candidate is like not aware of. So training helps them to bridge that gap or to cope with the new technology. You could say that helps them to perform better in overall general. Now, what are the different types of training? Basic training, basic literacy training, interpersonal skills training, technical skills training, problem solving skills, ethical training. Apart from this, there is also something called safety training, managerial training, and so on. So when we are talking about basic literacy skills training, it talks about how I'm testing your skill in terms of your responses in terms of your writing skills, your speaking skills, your communication skills in general. And so I can if I want to train you, like especially if there is, I'm hiring you for an international process. Okay, so their way of communication is different, their culture is different. So I'm trying to give you a basic literacy training, because they might use some jargons, they might use some acronyms which you may not be aware of. So that is one of the reason that we give. Interpersonal skills training could include more, or like trying to understand how you can how you can work together in groups to avoid unnecessary conflicts, to avoid groupism, to avoid because everybody is different, every individual in a group are different, there might be differences in culture there, because we are looking at diversity as well, right? So interpersonal skills will help us to fill all these gaps. Then technical training is more in terms of where we are trying to help train you on the requirements of the job, like uh, using a software, maybe I using the SAPs, what they use, that is more like technical training. I'm trying to give you a training that are required for that particular job in terms of skill requirement. It could be like Java, it could be C++, it could be how you have to use your knowledge on the computer skills to resolve this particular issue, and so on. Then problem solving skills, to understand how problems may arise, how the problems could be solved. So again, problem solving skills, there is a huge thing: defining the problem, identifying the problem, then identifying the problem, defining the problem, then looking at the alternatives, coming up with a solution, then cross-checking. So that's again a complete cycle. So I'm going to train you on that. Then there is safety training, where I would be training on first aid, on if you're working in a hazardous environment, then I need to again give you safety training. If you're working in any organization, in case of fire, safety training. In case of if you're a woman, then safety training for that. So first aid training, fire training. So all these include in the safety training. So ethical training, ethics training, or ethical training could include like how you need to function in an organization, what are the requirements, how you need to be ethical, you need, that is like to keep the information confidential, not to share information with each other, not to interact outside in a negative manner with the customers, not to interact wrongly with the other people in the organization, how to behave properly. All those things can be covered under the ethical training. Now, the last thing, training methods. Please give me like 10 minutes. I'll quickly finish this. Or I just need like 5 minutes actually. So the different types of training method could be like on-job training, off-job training, and e-training. So on-job training, as the name suggests, is the training that takes place while you are on the job. So it takes place during the normal working situation, using the tools what they are actually using the softwares what they are actually using, equipments, documents, materials that trainees will use once they are fully trained. On-job training is not limited, but is most commonly used for technical or skill training. So you are simultaneously sitting with an experienced person, and they are training you how to perform your job or how to work while while you're live and working with the live customer. Off-job training is something which takes place away from the normal work situation. Like a training room is given to you, like a classroom kind of a setup, where you're trained on various things. Like it could be culture communication training, it could be ethical training, it could be just a lecture method, as well as a dummy situation is given to you, or a dummy number is given to you on which you have to work, and so on. So This type of training has this advantage of allowing people to get away from work and concentrate more on the training itself. And off-job training is more effective in helping people acquire, to more newer concepts and ideas. The last one is e-training. E-training is electronic training or the online training. So off-job training could be like a classroom setup where you're there. E-training it could be like a material is given, like a self-study, where you're asked to complete a certain number of sessions and give the assessment. Or it could be like electronically, so you're sitting in one place and somewhere else another person is sitting and providing training to you. So these are the different training methods that are available. With this, we complete the training and development programs chapter. So if you have any questions or doubts, you can check with me now or even tomorrow. That's okay.
Thank you. We may be starting the other class. We may be getting late because it's scheduled at
Sure,
2.
sure. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll continue tomorrow. But
Sure.
thanks for your time.
Yeah.
How to go to Ambedkar University? Excuse me. How to go to Ambedkar University? అంబేద్కర్ యూనివర్సిటీ
అంబేద్కర్ యూనివర్సిటీ
అంటే ఆటో వెళ్ళాలా అటు Excuse me. ఎవరు లేదండి.
అన్ని కలిపి
4 1 2 1 మీరు సైకాలజీనా? ఓకే
మేడం అసైన్మెంట్స్ రాస్తున్నా ఫస్ట్ ఇయర్
సెకండ్ ఇయర్
అసైన్మెంట్స్ రాస్తున్నా అదే
రికార్డ్స్ రాయాలి. ఇది అయినాక ఇక నెక్స్ట్ అది. మీరు ఇప్పుడు సెకండ్ ఇయరా?
సెకండ్ ఇయర్.
ఓకే ఓకే. మరి హౌ కమ్ మీరు ఎగ్జామ్ రాయడానికి రాలేదా? గురుస్వామి
రాశాను మేడం.
అవునా?
మీరు ఆరుద్రేశ్వర గ్రూప్ లో ఉన్నారా?
అవును.
4-5 గ్రూపులు ఉన్నాయి కదా మనకి.
ఇప్పుడు మీరు క్లాసెస్ వింటున్నారా సెకండ్ ఇయర్ వి?
మేడం అటెండెన్స్ లేదు కదా, సొంతగా రాస్తే మంచిగా వస్తుంది మార్క్స్.
అలా కాదు, ఆయన ఏదో చెప్తున్నారు కదా అది
ఆరుద్రేశ్వర
అది సాయి సార్ ఎవరో
ఇన్స్పెక్టర్ ఆయన అసైన్మెంట్ నేను సబ్మిట్ చేస్తాను.
అవునా?
ఆయనది నాది ఇద్దరివి.
ఓకే ఓకే. ఆయన ఎక్కడో బయట ఉంటారు కదా, చెప్తున్నారా? క్లాస్ చెప్తున్నారా?
తెలియదు మేడం, నేను అంత గమనించట్లేదు.
నేను నా పనిలో నేను బిజీగా ఉన్నా. ఈయన ఎంతసేపు అయింది ఒక్కరు కూడా రాలే. అరే ఈయన చెప్పని కూడా చెప్పడిపోయి
సార్ ఉన్నారా తీసుకునే వాళ్ళు?
పిలుస్తుంటే వినిపిస్తలేదు అనుకుంటా, లోపల ఉన్నట్టున్నారు.
మీరేం చేస్తారు మేడం?
నేను ఇంగ్లీష్ ఫ్యాకల్టీ 35 స్కూల్లో ప్లస్ నిజామ్స్ మెడికల్ కాలేజ్. మీరు?
నేను ఇంజనీరింగ్ కాలేజ్ లో ఫ్యాకల్టీగా వర్క్ చేస్తాను మేడం. బీవీఆర్ ఐటీ హైదరాబాద్ అని నిజాంపేటలో కాలేజ్ ఉంది.
అవును.
ఆ కాలేజ్ లో ట్రిపుల్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్ ఫ్యాకల్టీ.
ట్రిపుల్ ఏం చెప్తారు?
అన్ని ట్రిపుల్ ఎలక్ట్రికల్ రిలేటెడ్.
ఓకే ఓకే. నమస్కారం సార్, ఎలా ఉన్నారు? సైకాలజీ. అయ్యో, అంత క్లియర్ గా రాశాక కూడా నా సార్?
మీరు మా దగ్గరికి వచ్చే రోజు, ఎందుకంటే మా దగ్గర ఏ సబ్జెక్ట్ లేవు, సబ్జెక్ట్ అన్ని మార్క్స్ పారేసింది, ఓన్లీ సైకాలజీ ఉంది నా దగ్గర.
అవునా? అరే లాస్ట్ ఇయర్ ఎన్నిసార్లు గంట సేపు మాట్లాడారు, మర్చిపోయినట్టు. అంతే, చాలా మంది వస్తున్నాంలే మేము కూడా.
అట్లని కాదు, ఇప్పుడు మీరు అన్ని కట్టుకున్నారు,
అదేలే అర్థం కాదు.
చాలా బాగా రాశాను
సార్, గుర్తుపట్టలేదు. లాస్ట్ టైం కూడా ఇచ్చారు అలానే.
మేడం మీకు ఎలా ఉన్నాయి?
ఏంటంటే ఇప్పుడు సబ్జెక్టు ఎకనామిక్స్ సబ్జెక్ట్ అన్ని మనకి
అవునవును,
ఓన్లీ సైకాలజీ ఉంది.
అవును, కరెక్టే లేండి. లాస్ట్ టైం కూడా మీరు అన్నారు ఇంత రాసుకొచ్చారు ఏంది అని అన్నారు. మీరు గుర్తుందో లేదో? అవునండి, అవునవును. 2-3 సార్లు కలిసాము. ఆరుద్రేశ్వర్ సార్ గుర్తుండొచ్చు మీకు. ఆరుద్రేశ్వర్ ఆయన నేను అందరం వచ్చాము ఆ రోజు. అదే ఆ రోజు అందరం వచ్చాము ఫస్ట్ టైం. దాని తర్వాత ఆయననే వస్తుండే.
ఇక్కడ నోట్ చేసి నేను ఆరుద్రేశ్వర్ అందరు ఇచ్చిన సార్ వాళ్ళతో పాటు ఇచ్చిన సార్.
ఆరుద్రేశ్వర్ గారు చాలా సార్లు వచ్చారు కదా చాలా మందితో.
ఆరుద్రేశ్వర్ ఆయన వచ్చి ఇచ్చినట.
అవునా? అవునవును సార్. ఆ స్టేప్లర్ అంటే ఇవ్వండి ప్లీజ్.
మనం రాసిస్తారు సరే రాజస్థాన్ నుండి మర్చిపోతుంటాడు. నోట్ చేసుకుంటాను.
అవునవును సార్. ఒకసారి స్టేప్లర్ ఇవ్వరా? ఈ సార్ కి కావాలంటున్నారు. పెద్దదా? ఇదిగోండి సార్. రికార్డ్ ఏమంటాయి ఉంటే ఇవ్వగలరా? ఫస్ట్ ఇయర్ రికార్డు. అవునా? 77 నంబర్ ఏదో రాస్తున్నారు.
9959747793.
అంతే అంతే. ఉప్పు భాగ్యలక్ష్మి 4 ఇచ్చాను. అన్ని 4. ఓకే ఓకే. థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్ సార్. రేపు ఉంటారా? కొంతమంది వద్దాం అనుకుంటున్నారు. ఓకే సార్. రికార్డ్ ఏదైనా అరేంజ్మెంట్ చేయరా ప్లీజ్? మరి ఎక్కడ దొరకచ్చు? ఎక్కడ లోపల? ల్యాబ్ అవును. లేదు లేదు, ఒక క్లాస్ లో పెట్టి చెప్పారు. హాల్లో చెప్పారు ఆ రోజు. ఒక్కసారి నేను సెకండ్ ఇయర్ క్లాస్ అటెండ్ కాలే. ఫస్ట్ ఇయర్ లో వచ్చాను. ఉంది ఉంది ఉంది.
ఆయన సైకాలజీ డిపార్ట్మెంట్ లో అకాడమిక్ బిల్డింగ్ లో ఫస్ట్ ఫ్లోర్ లో ల్యాబ్ ఉంటుంది. ఆ నర్సింగ్ లో కాంటాక్ట్ చేస్తే మీకు ఏమైనా ప్రొవైడ్ చేయగలుగుతారు.
అవునా?
ఆయన కూడా మీ గ్రూప్ అడ్మిన్లలో ఒక ఆయన.
ఓకే ఓకే చూద్దాం మరి. వెళ్దామా లోపలికి మరి? నాకైతే నడవాలి. నేను మీరా వస్తారా? ఓకే నాకేం ప్రాబ్లం లేదు. మీరు అది సబ్మిట్ చేస్తే నేను గ్రూప్ లో ఇస్తాను సార్. రేపు రమ్మని కొంతమంది అడుగుతున్నారు. సార్ రేపు ఎన్ని గంటల వరకు ఉంటారు? టైమింగ్ సార్?
4 వరకు ఉంటారు.
4ఆ? ఓకే.
రోజు 4 వరకు ఉంటారు.
లెవెన్ to 4 అని చెప్పనా సార్?
లేదు సార్. అది అడ్మిన్ ఒక ఆయన ఇమ్మన్నాడు. నేను గురుస్వామిని సార్. నేను
దాంట్లో గ్రూప్ అడ్మిన్ ఆయన కూడా. ఆయన అక్కడి నుంచి పంపించారా? మీరు రాస్తున్నారు ఆయనకి?
లేదు మేడం. ఆయన వెళ్తూ దాంట్లో మా ఇంట్లో ఇచ్చేసేసాడు.
అవునా? ఓకే.
పవన్ పవన్
ఈ రోజు ఇక్కడ రావడానికి ఎంత టైం పట్టిందంటే మొత్తం ఇది డిశ్చార్జ్ అయిపోయింది నాకు. డిశ్చార్జ్ అయిపోయింది మొత్తం నాకు.